Hello everyone, I'm Aiden Randall, and today we're talking about youth activism. I'll be interviewing Rachel Pant, who is the founder of Kids Right to Know and Gen Earth, to talk about the challenges and successes of youth activism, her story about how she became an activist and got involved, and how young people can make a difference. I started doing activism about 6 months ago, but I was raised in an environmental family before that. But I started by doing a delegation at a local council meeting where we were asking them to declare a climate emergency. And when that happened, I was really afraid to put myself out there and share my opinion. And I think that's a large barrier to young people, the fear of speaking out. On the positive side, after that, I decided to do a panel discussion, and I invited a local councillor and community activist. And we talked about what the city can do to take action on climate change. We brought forth some great ideas. Then later, I was able to connect with a local restaurant owner, and we talked about animal agriculture. I interviewed Lucy Sherratt of C-Band to talk about GMOs and industrial agriculture. And I was able to connect with other youth who believe in the same issues. Although the coronavirus has sadly interfered with our ability to strike and do demonstrations, it is fortunate in some ways because I've been able to meet activists from other places that I normally wouldn't meet because we're obliged to meet online. Rachel Pant is an environment youth activist and founder of Kids Right to Know, which is an organization which educates youth about the connection between food and climate change while advocating for GMO labeling. A media veteran, she's given dozens of interviews, including a live debate on CBC with Kevin O'Leary. She's an international and two-time TEDx speaker, the founder of Gen Earth Events, an environmental film platform, and has started a monarch butterfly conservation program, raising and releasing up to 2,000 monarchs to date. Thanks, Rachel, for joining us. I think you're muted, sorry.
I'm here now, sorry about that. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you.
Again, yeah, thank you. We're glad you were able to take part in this discussion. And I think it's going to be we'll do just a friendly discussion and see where it goes about youth activism. So I know you've been an activist for a long time now, and a lot longer than I have. What was the motivation for you to become an activist, and how did you get started?
Sure. I think a lot of activism starts off by accident in a lot of ways, and I think that was the case for me. I had never intended on becoming an activist. I never thought that that was my calling or my path. I was always passionate about issues. Growing up as a kid, I remember I used to lie about my age on petition websites so that I was able to sign petitions as early as 6 years old. And I just never considered that activism, but I cared so deeply about a lot of different issues. And that actually led me to, after being given an assignment for school, to do it on GMOs. So I had to write a speech, and through that, I learned more about our ecosystems. I learned more about our health. I learned more about the impacts of these genetically modified organisms on our entire world and what it's doing to farmers and human rights. And at that moment, I knew that I had to do something. So my activism, again, kind of started off by accident. And that's when I saw Prop 37 in California. That was their labeling bill. And I was really inspired by that idea that we should all have the right to know what's in our food. We all deserve the freedom to choose what we put in our bodies. And that's kind of how it started. We then created a website, created marches, our Twitter account, which is @Rachel'sNews. You can still follow me there. And then Kids Right to Know, our nonprofit, was formed. And it's just been an incredible journey so far.
Absolutely, that's an inspiring story, and I know that Kids Right to Know is a nonprofit organization that's been around for a while. When did you start that, and what does it advocate for? Is it kind of like Fridays for Future that other people can get involved and start their own groups, or what kind of is it?
So, Kids Right to Know was started in 2011, I believe. I've been involved with Activism and Kids Right to Know now for over 10 years, which is absolutely crazy. And everyone can be involved. We're always looking for people who are passionate. I think that's the biggest thing. We want people who are excited, passionate about our food systems. The entire point of Kids Right to Know is to create awareness about the toxic ingredients in our food, things like genetically modified organisms, pesticides and herbicides like Roundup, dicamba, all these issues in our food system that at the end of the day are really affecting our ecosystems. And beyond affecting our ecosystems, when we're putting these chemicals in our soil, it's damaging our soil and releasing carbon into our atmosphere, contributing further to climate change. And so we've started to really make that connection between the climate change issue and our food system issue. And that's why we need more and more people to get involved, because if we're going to solve climate change, we need to address food as a part of it.
Yeah, so Kids Right to Know is more than just GMOs. It's also about solutions to climate change, regenerative agriculture. Is that true?
Absolutely. And from that, also taking care of our pollinators, taking care of the soil, teaching kids what healthy eating is, what that means for the environment. So we really try and make it as broad as possible and understand the deep connections between even social inequalities in our food and climate change in our food system, because at the end of the day, they are really interconnected.
Right. And as I said earlier, sometimes the fear of speaking up is a challenge for a lot of young people. And there's a lot of people in the community perhaps that might feel passionate about these issues, but they're afraid to speak up because of maybe the pushback they're going to get, or just because they're not used to speaking in front of groups. But what is your advice for young people that want to start speaking up?
Yeah, I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself is, why are you afraid, and why don't you feel comfortable standing up? And I think in a lot of cases, it has to do more with the social construct of standing up, what your friends will think, what your family will think. And if you care deeply enough about the topic, if you care about making a difference, being involved, then that doesn't matter anymore. You have to look past that. And not everybody has to be in front of an audience. Not everyone has to stand up in the same way either. If you're not comfortable being in front of an audience, do something that you're passionate about. At the end of the day, activism has a space for everyone. And it doesn't matter if you're passionate about video editing or creating graphics or writing or whatever that looks like for you, what you're passionate about. There is a space for you in activism, because we need all assets to be combined so that we're stronger together.
Yeah, that was a beautiful picture of how we can take all our skills and create a picture by everyone contributing what they can do. So people can do artwork or even gardening or doing sustainable activities like that is a way of activism, by being an example, I guess. Yeah.
You don't need to all be the same. And that's the wonderful thing about activism, is that everyone within it is so different, and we all have our own strengths and our own passions, and it is going to look different for everyone. And that's what makes it wonderful, because it's not like anybody can be excluded when we need everybody to be a part of it.
Right. Yes. And some of the challenges, I would think, maybe the negative comments you receive. I've received a few, or just pushback from politicians, maybe criticizing you. I know that happened with Kevin O'Leary. But what was one of the challenges, or one of the biggest challenges that you faced during your time as an activist?
I think I faced, again, like you were mentioning, trolls and comments, and we had people threatening to ruin my reputation and all sorts of things. And it's interesting how far corporations and even our own government will go to silence the truth at the end of the day. I think that was our biggest thing, is that these big corporations have endless power and endless money. And that is obviously something that's intimidating to go up against. Another challenge that I experienced a lot was ageism, people saying I was too young to be talking about this topic, that I should just go back to school, I should not be focusing on something that's so science specific and out of my reach as a young person. And I think that that's a really unfortunate view that our society has, that young people can't have their own opinions, that they can't have their own strengths or do their own research or understand science, because it was something that I was always passionate about. And I feel that we do have endless strengths. And at the end of the day, if young people are not standing up for these issues, then who is? We can't continue to allow complacency and, apathy at the end of the day to take over. If us as young people are not rallying, then oftentimes the message is not getting out there.
Yes, young people are really, I think, have taken a stand, especially in the past few years. I think people are really looking at young people as the climate activist generation, which is great. And what are some ways that people can advocate for issues, like whether it's speaking or doing petitions, advocate for things like transforming their food system or wherever they live, like whether it's...
Yeah, I think one of the best ways that people can get involved and advocate in their own way is, first of all, reach out to groups like ours. And there are many other groups. You were talking about Lucy Sherritt from CBAN. There are so many groups, and I think, all need to start working together more. So if you're interested in being a part of it, ask us what you can do. Ask us how you can get involved. Ask if there's a petition that we need sharing, or if you need a volunteer for this weekend, or whatever that might look like, because we all need help. And especially in the nonprofit sector, which, we are, it is harder funding wise and finding volunteers, and we are a small group. So we're always looking for people to get involved. And if people feel really passionate about it, make a video, write an article, feel free to share those things with us. And we're always willing to share as well, because we're stronger when we work together, when we complement each other, when we help to spread the word. At the end of the day, advocacy is only so far as we make it go. So if we all work together to get the word out further, then it does a lot more good.
Yes, and for the people that are watching some here from rural Ontario, does it matter if they wanted to get involved with Kids Right to Know whether they're living in Toronto or whether they're not?
We need volunteers of all capacities, so it's not even something that has to be local. If you're interested in social media things, or you're interested in creating a video for Kids Right to Know, or even recruiting other volunteers, there's so much that we can do, and we're trying to expand very quickly now with a lot of different campaigns that we have going on. So we're always looking for help from anywhere.
Great, and just mentioning the petition, I thought of the GMO labeling petition, which I've been trying to promote lately. The deadline is tomorrow, I guess. So is there anything you'd like to tell our audience about why we should all sign that petition?
Absolutely. We absolutely need mandatory GMO labeling. It is a basic right. 64 other countries around the world already require mandatory GMO labeling, and Canada and the US are the only two industrialized nations that don't. And so we have to ask ourselves, why are we not afforded that right to choose the food that you put in our bodies, to choose what nourishes us? And instead, right now, we are currently not allowed to have that ability to choose. So I think it's incredibly important. And beyond that, right now, not only do we have a problem with genetically modified foods, but now there's the new generation of GMOs, which is gene editing, and synthetic genes. And this is a huge problem. If we don't gain mandatory GMO labeling, this new form of gene editing, which they won't have to call genetically modified because they don't add new DNA to it, they can label it as non-GMO, or perhaps even organic if they don't use pesticides. And it has the potential to ruin nature and to contaminate our natural resources. So I really encourage everyone, we need to get mandatory GMO labeling so that we can include this new form of gene editing in this as well, and make sure that everyone has the right to choose what they're putting in their bodies and what they're feeding to their kids. And so the bill is called E2416. And I really encourage everyone to find it online. You can also find it through CBAN, which is CBAN.com, and they have the petition listed there as well, where everyone can sign it. And again, the deadline is tomorrow. So if you have the chance, please go ahead and sign it. It's for all of our freedom to choose what we put in our bodies.
Yes. Yeah, everyone, let's get as many as possible. I think the last time I looked, it was almost 1,000. Let's get it over that mark. And it's cban.ca/labeling, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
That's the easiest way to find it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I also post the other link. But
perfect.
Yes. All right. So could you just tell us a little bit more about on your career as an activist, whether you've had maybe ups and downs, and was this sometimes that you felt like you had a success moment, like that you achieved something that you were trying to advocate for, and maybe a breakthrough, maybe a new law was passed, or people were
I think
more aware?
There has been successes, but I don't necessarily take credit for them, because I think I'm one small person in this entire movement, and I feel very lucky to be a part of that. And I think it's collectively through our entire food movement that it's been interesting to see how, in a way, we've shifted how people think about food. And that's really exciting. More and more, we're seeing people demanding non-GMO or demanding organic. We've seen prices on organic go way down because it's more available. We have more organic farmers. We have more organic foods being grown. We've seen the non-GMO project label go from a couple products to hundreds of, tens of thousands of products labeled as non-GMO. And even though we don't have mandatory GMO labeling, at least we have this possibility in the meantime so that people can still choose non-GMO foods. So I think there have been success after success in terms of a movement. And it's exciting to see that continue to grow and how people continue to shift their perspectives on our food system.
Yes. Another thing relating to the challenge pet, sometimes we can feel like, on the other hand, that we're doing all this work, but nothing's happening, and still there's no GMO labeling, and still the use of fossil fuels is increasing. But what can help give us hope for the future, that what we're doing is having an impact and and if we keep going, we're going to see a difference in the world?
I oftentimes have people ask me, what's the point, Rachel? You're fighting against massive corporations with endless funding. They're never going to stop. And so, it's a losing battle. And I think that's a really negative perspective. I could not live if I believed that, because I truly think that there is a possibility for a better future. We need to fight for it, and we need to really work together in order to achieve it, but it is possible. And things do seem slow. It never seems like it's enough, but we do have to look at how far we've come as well. And although it's not far enough, when you really add things up, we have made a difference. We have made a change. And as long as we continue to put pressure and educate and demand more from our politicians, the fact that we have Health Canada and Environment Canada and politicians that are simply listening to corporations instead of us is completely non-understandable for me, because at the end of the day, they should be protecting us as consumers and as citizens. But instead, they're protecting the interests of big corporations. We know this. We see this with fossil fuels. We see this with our food industry. It's the same thing. And so we need to make sure that we are electing people who are looking out for us and not the corporations. So again, I know I've felt it before. I've felt the burnout as an activist, continuously working, and it happens. And that's why you also have to take care of yourself, because if you take care of yourself, you can also take care of others. You can take care of the planet. But there is a lot that we can do, and there is a lot that we have done over the years.
Yes, and that was inspiring about how that if we take care of ourselves, we're also taking care of the planet. I think when I talked to Lucy, I was mentioning that I thought that if food that's healthy for us is probably healthy for the planet as well. So decreasing the level of junk food and other products is probably decreasing industrial agriculture use as well. But could you tell us a little bit about what your regenerative agriculture, your work about regenerative agriculture? And I got a question from someone in the community about why is regenerative agriculture better for the environment than regular farming practices?
Sure. So personally, I'm just advocating for a better agriculture system that, things like organic and regenerative agriculture that are absolutely non-GMO, that are nourishing the soil, are subsidized rather than this massive industrial agriculture that we currently have that subsidizes genetically modified corn and soy. So for those who don't know, subsidizing is basically they get a reward for growing that type of food from the government. And so it's really unfortunate that our government is paying for people to grow destructive foods. And it's the same as our government is paying for people to extract fossil fuels. They are subsidizing those industries. And there's a lot of similarities between the two. In terms of why regenerative agriculture is so much better. When we damage the soil with genetically modified foods, monocultures, that means the same crop for acres and acres, as well as dousing chemicals on it, it damages the soil, it damages ecosystems, it damages pollinators. And these are all vital for creating food and for maintaining our food production for generations to come. We know that we need to increase food production because more and more people are being born, our population continues to grow globally. But if we end up killing our pollinators, there is no food because 1 in 3 bites of food every single day is pollinated by a bee. And so we need to be able to protect those pollinator populations. When we damage our soil, it actually releases carbon into the atmosphere and contributes further to climate change. So we know that 44 to 57% of all greenhouse gas emissions is coming from agriculture in general. So that's from transportation of our food, that's from damaged soils, that's from food waste, from factory farms with animals. And so we know that our system is really, really broken. And regenerative agriculture is kind of the opposite. What it does is it nourishes the soil. It brings back carbon from our atmosphere and brings it back into the soil where it belongs, where it not only creates more nutritious food, but it helps to balance water cycles. It helps to grow more food, helps to mitigate climate change. The results are really endless. And when we rely more on nature and go back to the natural way that things are done, we see benefits from everyone. For farmers, building back local economies where they can make money again and they're not reliant on big corporations. We see benefits for the consumers, for our health, and of course we see benefits for the environment.
Right. Yeah, regenerative agriculture, I think, is taking steam. I think I hear about it here as well. There's a local farmer that's done a bunch of talks around here about it. So I think regenerative and other forms of farming is a great way to solve the climate crisis. And I find a lot of people think about it more as a fossil fuel issue and dealing with transportation, but they don't talk that much about agriculture. Do you find that?
Oh, absolutely. I think agriculture has been so left out of the discussion for so long, and we need to tackle both. There's no doubt about it. We need to address fossil fuels. We need to move towards renewable energies. At the end of the day, this is such a huge contributor to climate change. How can we not address it? But we also need to look at the other things that are contributing so greatly. And of course, our food system is such a big part of that. And so if we can tackle both at once, if we can start transitioning to renewable energies while at the same time transforming our food system so that it's benefiting everyone, we could really have a solution on our hands. And they say even as of right now, if we were to cut out all fossil fuels, there's just too much carbon in our atmosphere in order to be able to stop climate change right now. It would still be an ongoing issue. So if we can stop fossil fuels and then draw down this carbon using this regenerative agriculture, then we can really start to mitigate the effects. I think one of the biggest things we have to be concerned about, though, is, as I was mentioning with gene editing, we have to make sure that they're not taking over, in terms of the big corporations, they're not taking over the word regenerative and using it for their genetically modified foods. and saying that they're, regeneratively growing sustainable food, because the reality is food that is patented, food that is genetically engineered is never sustainable.
Yes. And speaking of that, I actually got a reply to one of my tweets from GMO Free USA. It said, one of our worst fears could come true. We mustn't allow operatives for biotech to glom onto the regenerative egg movement. And they were posting an article about gene editing, which I probably should read more about. I'm not too aware of that aspect of it.
There's so much to know. And that's the thing with this movement, is that it's always adapting, it's always changing, and there's always new products that are up for approval. So it's a constant battle, but it makes it interesting, and it gives us something to fight towards for a better future.
Yes. I noticed when we were talking about the government and the corporate collusion between the government and the corporations, we see that a lot in all different aspects of the government. Do you think young people as activists should get more involved in politics, perhaps run for office or participate more in the democratic system?
Yeah, I think politics and government is really important for us to be a part of. I think oftentimes we overlook that, but one of the greatest ways that we can create change is through policy making and is through talking to politicians. And I think it has to go from both things, an advocacy point of view and a policy point of view and hands-on point of view. So I think when we work together, again, everyone's going to have different strengths. So some people are going to be really great at leading a protest. And then some people are going to be really great at writing up those policy measures. And some people are going to be really great at working hands-on in community gardens and organizing that within their community. And so the strengths of everyone can be used in different ways. And policy and politics and government is such a wonderful way for us to get involved civically, but also to affect real change, because they need our opinions more than ever. They haven't listened to us for far too long. And now is time for us to get involved.
Yes, I think young people are really getting more and more involved, which I'm pleased to see. And what are some ways that we can all connect and join together to create a movement of change? Like, ways that youth activists from around the country can really create a network to create a broader coalition of support for issues.
I think more organizations need to work together. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I think so far in Canada, we have, or I mean, globally as well, we have all these massive corporations, not corporations, but organizations working on very similar issues. And that's wonderful that we have a lot of people addressing the problems, but oftentimes we don't work together enough. And I think even with youth organizations across Canada, we need to have climate groups, we need to have food groups, we need to have water groups, we need to have all of these different passions and organizations come together in a way that we can collaborate and share each other's efforts, because all of the issues that we face in Canada are so deeply interconnected. So we need to make sure that we are honoring the land and at the same time collaborating, because we have a lot more power together.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Our power is when we are in numbers. Yeah. The more people, the more we can create change. Mm-hmm. I think I'd like to ask a few questions from the audience that were given to me before. One is from Hannah from Owen Sound, and she said, how are GMO products harmful to the environment?
Sure. So it's GMOs and then the entire system that is grown with it. The reasons that GMOs were created, so just to preface a little bit, there are two main types of genetically modified foods. There's pesticide producing and herbicide resistant. So pesticide producing is where they insert a toxin directly into the seed, and when the plant grows and a bug tries to eat it, its stomach will be poked with ulcers and it'll die. On the other hand, we have herbicide resistant. So herbicide resistant is where they engineer it so that they can spray Roundup, for instance, which the key ingredient is glyphosate, and a little bit about that. I'm sure many have seen the cases in the United States saying that Roundup and glyphosate cause cancer. So it is a very toxic chemical that we are spraying directly on our food. And these plants are made so that it resists it, but the weeds around it will all die. Because of that, herbicide use has gone up incredibly high since the introduction of genetically modified foods. That's because it's easier. If you don't have to worry about killing the crop, you can spray it as liberally as you'd like to. On the other hand, pesticide use has also gone up because over time, superbugs were created and they become resistant to the pesticide or the toxin directly in the plant. And so farmers then have to go over and spray insecticides and pesticides. So that means our pesticides and herbicides have gone up. That's impacting our bees and our pollinator populations, even butterflies like monarchs that depend on milkweed. And the milkweed is completely being decimated by herbicides. Our bee populations, as most know, have gone down dramatically. And this is just another example of our industrial agriculture taking over. And on top of that, our soil has incredibly high levels of chemicals. It's going into our water systems. We are drinking it. And really destroying sensitive ecosystems. Everything is made in a balance that benefits something else. And when we destroy that by putting in patented seeds that can go everywhere, we're destroying that delicate balance. Not only are these seeds patented, but if they end up in another farmer's property, that farmer can be sued or their land can be taken away for infringing on patent rights, even if they didn't want to grow those seeds. And so it's an entire system that is really broken and is affecting farmers, it's affecting our environment, and it is, of course, affecting us.
Right. And I think what you were saying is that the expansion of industrial agriculture has coincided with GMO crops. Is that right? It's enabled the expansion of GMO industrial agriculture because of these technologies, right?
Absolutely. And
yeah.
The other thing is, again, when we're growing these industrial foods, we're damaging our soil to almost irreversible points in some cases, where it takes years and years for it to recover. And that means it's continuously leaching out carbon into our atmosphere. And with this climate crisis that we have right now, we can't afford to continue damaging our soil and also making it difficult to grow food for future generations. We need to make sure that we have enough food for the kids of the future, and also that we are addressing this climate problem in the best way we can.
Yes. And in terms of the way that this has affected our pollinators, I heard about the bees, maybe a 50% decline I read about, or the monarchs, it's really sad, perhaps at least 75%, is that right?
They've said over the past decade or two, it's been about a 90% decline. And that's been since the introduction of, really industrialized agriculture with genetically modified seeds. And actually, even this year, I've been raising monarchs for the past couple of years and have had wonderful success. And it's been amazing just watching that process. But we released hundreds last year. And this year, although they're supposed to arrive late May, early June, we have only seen one, and it was this week. And so there are issues with the migration. They're being exposed to high levels of insecticides and herbicides, and many of them are not making it back in the same way.
Yes. Could you just tell us again a little bit about the monarch conservation program? So do you grow them from caterpillars and then release them?
Sure.
Right? Yes.
We actually find the eggs on plants, and I don't recommend everyone doing this. We did a lot of research before we got involved with this because we want to make sure that we're doing what's best for the environment. And oftentimes what we see in the bigger facilities that are growing monarchs, even for weddings and events, they release so many at the same time, and oftentimes they have disease from being kept in smaller conditions, and then it affects the wild populations. So we did a lot of research as to how to do it sustainably and how to make sure it's in the best interest of the monarchs at the end of the day. So we grow them from a very young stage. And the reason being is that they have less than a 10% chance of surviving in the wild on their own, partially because of lack of milkweed, herbicides, and then other predators and disease. And it's just amazing watching them go through all of these phases. We try and do it in the most natural setting possible. We just take away a couple of those threats, so they're not constantly exposed to spiders and things like that, but they are still outdoors. They're able to still get that air and be in a very natural environment. And I think that's so important for raising them, because that's how they really get strong and are able to go through the migration process. So now we are creating a sanctuary, hopefully, where we'll have a physical space and people will be able to come and visit and hopefully learn. And our goal with that is to have this education space where we can bring education to the level that people are at. Oftentimes when we talk about pollinators or monarchs, many don't make the connection to our food system and how that is connected. But through showing tangibly why our butterflies are dying and why the bees are dying, and talking about pesticides and herbicides in that space, we hope to create a lot of awareness.
Well, that's an inspiring way to teach children. Is it aimed mainly at children, or like for the kids right to know? Or?
It's aimed at everyone. I think now more than ever, we need to make sure that everyone is involved. And, you know, a lot of parents love teaching their kids about it. So we want everyone to be interested. And we also hope to have film screenings and movie nights there where we'll be able to show documentaries about pollinators and about milkweed and herbicides and GMOs and our entire food system. So really hoping that that is a good educational tool for everyone.
That's great. I have another question, I think, from GMO Free Canada. I got a reply. It said, please share your thoughts on industries that might try to they might try to take over the youth movement to try and force their agendas. How can that be addressed? And I think that's an important question.
It is an important question. I think amongst the youth movements, we've seen a surge of vegetarianism and veganism. So this is one aspect of it. I'm vegan as well, and I know you are too. And constantly we're being advertised that we should be eating soy, that we should be eating, these plant-based products. And oftentimes they're not made with the best ingredients. You can find some amazing products out there, but I do think that not all plant-based diets are created equally. And so we have to start to address that. And one of the things that our government just did, for instance, is invested millions of dollars into creating a plant-based program and factory where they will be making more plant-based products, but it will all be made out of canola. And most of the canola is genetically engineered. And so that is one industry in terms of the food movement that I think could really take over. And other things that we see are big corporations and greenwashing that say that they're helping us and that they're part of the climate movement, when in reality, they are still polluting. We see that with Unilever, for instance, the big parent company of all these smaller companies, winning green awards, when in reality, they're one of the biggest plastic polluters on Earth. And so we need to really start addressing those who are appropriating the climate and environmental movement, when in reality, they're the very ones that are contributing to it.
Yes, that's an important point to remember, because sometimes we can get fooled by some of the greenwashing, like you said. And again, I think that was a great interview, and I think maybe we should start to wrap it up. It was around half an hour that we planned, but thank you for sharing your story. And I wondered if there's any other point you'd like to share to the audience about youth activism,
Sure.
The recent activist, or any final thoughts?
I think now is the time for people to get involved. We can't wait anymore. We can't wait on complacency and apathy. COVID-19 sort of came out of the woodworks and we were all affected by it. And of course, some people were significantly more affected by than others, but I think we have to look at some of the positives and realize that we do have an opportunity for change right now. Unfortunately, the normal that we had before was not good enough, and we can't go back to that normal. It was not benefiting anyone but large corporations at the end of the day. And so we need to take advantage of this time where we're at a pivotal moment environmentally, socially, politically, to make the real change that we want to see. And we have that capability if we work together.
Yes. And what is your message to older adults, right? And rather than the youth, what is your message to adults? Should they listen to young people? How can they uplift the voices of young people? What can they do?
Absolutely listen to us. We need to be listened to. And I think so many young people have great opinions and thoughts and passion. And I think we also need to listen to some of the older generations too sometimes, not necessarily everyone, because we see that there's a lot of corruption and a lot of not so great people out there. But I think those who are interested in environmentalism and activism, we need to work together intergenerationally. And for those who are older out there and who are watching, the biggest advice I can give is leave space for us, just to be able to voice our thoughts, just to be able to give us some form of power in the room. We need to be able to have our opinions listened to, but beyond just listened to, we also need our opinions enacted on. I think far too long we've been used sort of as tokenistic young people in the room. It's like we invited one youth activist and we're all about inclusion, but oftentimes we're not genuinely listened to, or the ideas that we put forward are not genuinely acted on. So I think there's so much potential for us to work together and to collaborate on things, but we just need to make sure that everyone's voice at the end of the day is heard in the right way.
Well, thank you. That was a good way to wrap up. And if people want to follow you or join Kids Right to Know, how would they get in? How would they reach you or find out more about the Kids Right to Know?
Sure. So you can go to our website, which is kidsrighttoknow.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So our Twitter account is @Rachel'sNews, as well as Kids Right to Know. Our Facebook, same thing, Rachel Parent and Kids Right to Know. Our Instagram, the same thing, Rachel's News and Kids Right to Know. And if you want to get involved with us, feel free to email us, get in contact. You can reach us at info@kidsrighttoknow.com. And we're always looking for people to get involved who are passionate, who are excited about making a real change.
Okay, thank you. And that was a great conversation. I enjoyed talking about some of the stories and how we can make a difference. And I just want to remind everyone again to sign the petition, because maybe right after this you could go to cban.ca/labeling and get it done. And just one point, I think they need to click the confirmation link in the email, or it won't get counted. So just remember to do that as well. So again, thank you, Rachel Parent, who's the founder of Kids Right to Know, and Jen Id. Thank you for joining us. Do you want to say goodbye to everyone?
Yes, thank you so much again, Aiden, for having me. This has been wonderful. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that we can do this again.
Oh, well, thank you, and maybe we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
All right. Goodbye. Thanks again. Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching our interview. I was happy to talk to Rachel about the many ways that youth activists can make a difference in the world, because really what we're trying to do is make the world a better place, tell people that we don't need to live in a society that's unjust, that's destroying the planet. We can build a future that's sustainable, where people are treated equally. We can talk about the need for a sustainable food system. We can transform a transportation system. And we can learn from our challenges that we need to keep going. That sometimes it might look difficult, it might look like nothing's changing, but if we keep going, we'll overcome these challenges, and I believe that we can create a nation that is sustainable and is just. Again, thank you all for watching, and I'll be doing more town halls like this. Usually they're Fridays at 7 p.m. And see you soon. Thank you all. See you soon.